Good morning, afternoon to everyone who are joining us from the US and Canada, and good evening to those of you who are joining us from Israel. My name is Rabbi Margie Sella. I am an educator for Women's League for Conservative Judaism, and I would like to welcome you to our third and final installment of this year's Sichot ben Achayot program, Making Peace in Our World. Oseh Shalom, Azor Lanu Lahavi Shalom Le'olam. Maker of peace, help us to bring peace to the world. For those of us here in the United States, today's date, December 7th, is truly an ironic date to be talking about peace in our world, as it commemorates the 84th anniversary of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, which drew our country into the Second World War. At the same time, for our sisters in Israel, we recognize that the quest for a lasting peace is still elusive over 2 years after the Hamas attack of October 7th, 2023. And even as we celebrate the return of all the living hostages from Gaza, as well as the return of most of our deceased hostages for burial, we all continue to pray for and demand the return of the body of Ron Gvili, our last remaining hostage in Gaza. This is the 5th year in a row that we have been able to bring these programs to you through a generous grant we have received from Keren Kayemet Israel, Masorti Olami, and Merkaz Olami. Our goal in these 3 workshops is to work towards fostering a better mutual understanding between Israeli Jewish women and Jewish women in other countries around the globe. Before we begin today's program, I would like to welcome International President of Women's League for Conservative Judaism, Julia Loeb, for some words of greeting.
Hi, everyone. I won't repeat what Rabbi Sala said, but welcome to you all. It's nice to see so many of you on here. And I encourage you, if you got the registration link from somebody and you don't see all the programs that we have available at Women's League, to reach out to us, to Rabbi Sala, or to the contact information on the registration link, and we will make sure that we get you signed up so you can get our information and see all the other amazing programs that we have to offer. Looking forward to this afternoon, morning, evening. Thank you. And thank you to our speakers and to Rabbi Sala and her team for putting this together.
Thank you, Julia. And now I would like to introduce our Executive Director, Rabbi Ellen Mullins-Fields, for some words of greeting.
Hello, Shavua Tov to everybody. It's good to see everyone here. Thank you, Rabbi Sella, for organizing, again, a wonderful series. And of course, we thank Masorti Olami, Merkaz Olami, and Kakal for the grant. And we look forward to, God willing, getting another one next year. It's always great for our sisters to study together, both across the North America and also Israel. And I thank Diane Friedgut, our Women's League liaison in Israel, for an incredible effort to get so many of our women together. And it's really fantastic to see everyone. We have future opportunities to do this as well for the Masorti Women's Days of Study. That'll be in February and March coming up. And some of those programs will be hybrid. I know Diane works hard to make them hybrid so that sisters in Israel could be together and we can learn as well. And that all happens through our support, financial support, of the Masorti Women's Days of Study, which is our Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday was last Tuesday, but for Women's League, it lasts all of the month of December. We're 75% of the way there. And if you go to our website, WLCJ.org, it immediately pops up to be able to donate to Masorti Days of Study. Diane, thank you for everything. And also, I just want to do a special shout out to our Florida Region Torah Fund region event that they're all together during their day of having the ability to Zoom together with us. So thank you very much. And as next week we'll be beginning Hanukkah, may this be a season of light and may we see our last hostage come home as well.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Mullins-Fields. So now let's begin our program. We will be hearing from 4 women as part of today's program, followed by a Q&A session. During the presentations, the chat will be open for you to enter any questions you have for our speakers. Rabbi Wolensfields will be monitoring those questions as they come in, and the Q&A session will take place at the end of today's program after after we have heard from all four of our speakers. But you can enter your questions at any time. So I encourage you, if something comes up in your mind while you're listening to one of our speakers, put your question in the chat before you forget about it. And then later on, we will hear from Rabbi Wolensfields. I also want to let everyone know that today's program is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the WLCJ website, along with the recording of our first two sessions from this year, from September 28th and November 2nd, as well as the sessions from our 4 previous years on the WLCJ website, wlcj.org. Our first speaker for today is Rabbi Miriam Berkowitz, who was born and raised in Montreal, Canada, but has lived in Israel since 2008. She is an educator, certified Israeli tour guide, and an author. She is currently completing a book about Jewish sources related to peace, and she is speaking to us today on the topic of peace as the ideal in classic Jewish texts. Rabbi Berkowitz?
Okay, thank you so much. And I have to mention my mother, Judy Knight, and my sister, Cynthia Knight, who joined us today. And thank you to all. Thank you to everyone for being here and to learning together. And I look forward to learning from the other speakers as well. So this is a book in progress written by a colleague here in Israel. And there's a very little known book of the Talmud that doesn't have yet a commentary. So that's what the book is about. It's called Perek HaShalom, and it's called one of the minor tractates. It's okay. So the Talmud, let's say there was the written Torah in however many thousand years BCE you think it happened, and then the Mishnah and the Talmud, the oral Torah, the Mishnah written down in about year 200, and the Babylonian Talmud, let's say, in about year 500. And then there were a few things that came on afterwards that didn't get to be studied as much. So this thing called Perek HaShalom was written probably around the 8th century, but in the style of previous things and quoting rabbis from the Mishnah times. So it's printed in the Talmud at the end of the tractate Nizikim about damages, but it's in the style of more like Pirkei Avot, like sayings and wisdom, and it's a combination of 20 different sections, like sentences or how great is peace, Gadol HaShalom, and why it is so great. So I'll just read you something from the introduction. It's written by my friend and colleague Moti Kaplan, and I'm translating it to English and making it more accessible for English-speaking audience. So we had a talk with JPS, and they're interested, but so it's still work in progress. So, and it's like not my material, so I appreciate everyone just keeping it discreet for yourselves for now. But a lot of the material is, of course, in the public domain, and there's quotes from the Torah, there's quotes from the prophets, and quotes from other midrashim. So of course everyone can read them whenever they want. And I also found a nice text study. If you write, does everyone know what Sefaria is? It's like a really good place to look up Jewish text studies in English and Hebrew. And there's a text study about peace there by Rabbi David Kunin from California. So if you just look up source on peace, a lot of this stuff is there too. So the point is that peace is the ideal in Judaism, and even though we're allowed, self-defense when necessary, that we are not a litigious or militaristic people by nature. And with the small example of the conquest of Canaan by Joshua, basically try and live at peace unless our existential, spiritual, or physical existence is at stake. So some of the examples, would you mind putting up, Karen,
Sure.
the source sheet there? Okay. And in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, we're told to be here's one example from the Dvarim. Hillel v'Shammai. Even in times of war, you're supposed to first call for peace. And this, I'm sure it's very resonant. Hillel and Hillel said, be like in the Psalm, Sur Aaron, the high priest, the brother of Moses. Love, so peace, there are a lot of other examples, love mankind, and draw them close to the Torah. Of other so this mitzvot, is only if the what does it mean to be like Aaron? Then you can so this is then you have to do the mitzvah. Only if you plant a field, then you have to give away the edges to the poor, or only if you happen to see your neighbor's donkey. So have you heard struggling under a burden, then you have to return. I think it's number 5 here. Or if you build a house, then you have to build a balcony on the top so no one falls. So you could make it a bit smaller, but you don't have to go out of your way to get in those situations. So it's basically like shuttle diplomacy. He would go back and forth. If he heard two people were fighting, he would and pursue it actively. The other commentators say in all times make peace with you, and then he would go to the other one. Oh, the great expense, so devastating. He's trying to make people of different faiths, and then the two of them would meet and and that you must seek peace and pursue. So there's a lot of I guess we'll have to 20 ask, if we had an hour, we'd do more detail, but like are about how you can blur the truth. The basic interest of obviously when you think about it, you think the absence of conflict. This is one example that we're trying to bring more things between it's the energy that gives how much time do I have left? It's even cosmic, that the angels need peace. It's a kind of harmony.
Going until
and
about
it's
12:25.
Peace is the name of God. Yeah, but I think that was a mistake because it was 20 minutes. The name of the people.
Right.
I'm more than happy to keep talking. It goes through all these different scenarios. So one thing I'm sure everyone has the. Has heard this lots of times before from Isaiah, that there's like a thing of the vision of when Moses died, future. But we also want to say that it's not just for the distant future; it's also wailed for him, cried for him now. And when Aaron died, it says all of the down people to the one about Aaron. And so this is so we can think of peace on the national level, and then also on the personal level here. So I think it's number 5. Okay, so Aaron would make peace between. Aaron is considered the great example of a peacemaker, people, and also peace between, within the family. So the same thing. There's a very funny thing he said to the man who was mad at his wife. He's like, well, if you leave her, you might not find anyone that's better. And even if you do, the first time you have a fight with her, she'll tell you, I know this is your fault because you also argued with the first one. So, and then it said that here, how many thousands in Israel were named after Aaron because he made peace between the husband and wife, and they would have gotten divorced, but because of him they didn't, and then when they had a child they would call him Aaron. So the Midrash says that 80,000 kids named Aaron came to escort his funeral bier when he went out. And if we want to just read that in Hebrew, it's just up a tiny bit, just in the Hebrew. If there's some Israelis here, I'm not sure. ועוד כמה אלפים היו בישראל שנקראו שמם אהרון, שאלמלא אהרון לא בא זה לעולם. Thank you so much. שהיה משים שלום בין איש לאשתו ומזווגין זה עם זה, והיו קוראים שם הילוד על שמו. Okay, so that's on the individual level, that we all want to take on these attributes. If God's name is peace and we want to be like that, and we want to, not argue with people and even go out of our way to help others. And the Chafetz Chaim, that the writer of Shmirat HaLashon, the book about gossip and good actions, he wrote that, don't be discouraged. Don't think that you can never achieve complete peace. Even if you do a tiny bit, it's still some achievement. So don't give up on it. There's statements how peace is the basis of the whole Torah, that Maimonides says that. And here this Abarbanel, one of the Torah commentators, this isn't on the sheet, from Portugal in the late 1400s, he said, one who views peace only in its narrow sense as the absence of war does not see the precious splendor of its greatness. Peace is the thread. Peace is so much more. Peace is the thread that connects and binds all creatures. It shapes the proper order of the world and fosters human love for one another. Contained with it are health, wholeness, goodness, and beauty. Okay, so we know that peace is the ideal because even King David, who unified Jerusalem and it was the king of the north and the south, Judea and Israel, and charismatic and famous and everything. He did not merit to build the first temple because he was a man of war, and he united the kingdom by war. So God says to him that you will not be able to build the temple because you have like blood on your hands. And who got to be the one who to build the temple? It was his son Solomon, or Shlomo, and his very name has the word peace in it, Shalom, Shlomo. So he's the one who merited to build the temple. So okay, not supposed to get into politics, but I just, because of people here, I mean, in Karmit being here and everybody in Israel who had so much trauma this year, like, I just wanted to say, I know that we can't be naive and like, oh, peace, peace, peace. I know that Israel lives in a tough neighborhood, and, it's not easy to make wise decisions. And there's a quote in Jeremiah that says, they offer healing offhand for the wounds of my people, saying, all is well, when nothing is well. So I know it's not easy to just say, oh, peace, peace, peace. But on the other hand, we do have to keep it as an ideal in front of us, like Shiviti, Tamid, that always in our minds. And it's just, I'm happy to see that Judaism, with all these sources and tradition of being seekers of peace, it's if you read about the Greek philosophers, they could even say that war is like the best way to be, and that's the strong people. And even in times of peace, your leaders should be people of like military leaders, because they're the smartest and the wisest, and that we have a different approach. So maybe we'll just read one more source. I think it's 4. So this is also in the Mishneh times. It's around the same time as all the things quoted in Perek HaShalom, even though maybe Perek HaShalom was put together later. And this is also called in the Oral Torah. It's in the Mishnah, which is mostly laws, but this is Pirkei Avot, is sayings more of good behavior, not specifically laws. And Rabban Shimon Gamliel used to say, on 3 things the world stands: on justice, on truth, and in peace. If you go up a tiny bit more, we could see the Hebrew. As it says in Zechariah, execute the judgment of truth and peace in your gates. It's a little harder to know in Hebrew, but רבן שמעון גמליאל אומר, על 3 דברים העולם עומד, על הדין ועל האמת ועל השלום, שנאמר אמת ומשפט you could say emet umishpat and then shalom shiftu b'sharechem, or emet umishpat shalom. Like they're really two things. There's truth and there's the judgment of peace. And in Perek HaShalom, there's a whole chapter about that. How do peace and truth fit together? And sometimes you have to also in a court, maybe, mother will not agree with this, but be a little less like, okay, what's the absolute truth? And a little more like, well, what's going to let everyone go home feeling like they got something, and that they're not going to leave the court and keep being angry and resentful about each other. So I like to just walk out into the world with this idea that peace is the vision, it's the ideal, it's the foundation of the world. And nevertheless, it's messy, and nevertheless, it's imperfect. But even if we make a little bit of progress, it's still something to be proud of, that we want to pursue peace in interpersonal relationships and in national and in community and with people of all cultures. And I amen, and look forward to hearing all the other speakers too. So thank you for this opportunity, and good.
Thank you, Rabbi Berkowitz. You have given us
Okay.
much food for thought. And
Okay.
so I want to remind everyone once again, before we move on, if you have any questions about anything that the Rabbi Berkowitz shared with us, you can enter those questions in the chat right now while they're fresh in your mind. And then we will try and address some of them later on when we get to the Q&A session at the end. So in our other two programs previously this year, we also wanted to concentrate on those who are directly involved in the quest for peace, those who serve in the IDF. And in our first program on September 28th, we actually heard from a young woman who is a lone soldier about her experiences in the IDF. So our next speaker today is Harriet Levin, who is the daughter of two Holocaust survivors and the mother of three children, Elissa, Dara, and Dara's twin brother, Michael, Zichrono Livracha. She is a passionate Zionist who passed her love for Israel on to her children. Today, she will tell us the story of her son, Michael, who lost his life in the 2006 Lebanon War, and she will explain how his passing inspired Israel's newfound respect for lone soldiers. Harriet?
Thank you so much, Rabbi. How long do you want me to speak about Michael before I turn it over to Stacy?
15 minutes.
Okay. I never know where to start. I could talk about Michael from now until forever. Like Rabbi mentioned, I am the daughter of two Holocaust survivors. My dad was in Auschwitz for over 2 years when the life expectancy was 60 days. Michael was really close to him, and I think that was a really huge part in Michael learning at a young age how important Israel was. For Michael's 8th birthday, when everybody was having birthday cakes that looked like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Mario Bros, whatever was big then, Michael had a Mogen David. And from that age on, Michael kept saying, I'm going to Israel, I'm going to Israel, I'm joining the IDF. And everybody said, sure, sure, sure. And he never lost that passion. When he got to 11th grade, he wanted to do, then it was USY High, now it's the Alexander Musk program. And we said, your grades are definitely not good enough. And he put a big sign on his ceiling, which is still there. Why are you looking up at the ceiling? You need to study. And he brought all those grades up. And I think that was a huge turning point for Michael going to Israel then. His teacher was a former Philadelphian who made Aliyah. He made history come alive for Michael. They didn't just learn in a textbook. They went to these places and learned. Michael came off the plane wearing a kippah and tzitzit. And I said, okay, this kid is really going to Israel. He looked at colleges with his dad, and I kept saying, yeah, he's not going. Michael left after high school. He filled out papers. He did not go with any organization. There was no lone soldier organization then. There were a lot of people, individuals running around trying to help people, giving out gift packages, especially at the holidays. Michael slept on a park bench for the first 2 or 3 nights because he had no idea where to go. There's a great documentary about Michael, and I don't want to take up the whole time about it, but he went not speaking Hebrew. He went to Ulpan on the kibbutz that he lived in. He waited and waited for his papers to come, and they didn't. And Michael literally broke into the office, the recruiting office. And when they saw that, they said, most people try to get out of here. You're the only person who broke in. He joined the Army. He went on to become a paratrooper in an elite unit. Michael was 5'6" and maybe weighed 116 pounds. His first jump, he drifted off course, and they had to put weights on him after that. We would talk to Michael every Friday morning for us, in the afternoon for him before Shabbos. And each week he would complain about something. I can't get to here. I can't get to there. Everything's closed on the time I get out. My Hebrew's not good enough. I need help filling out papers. And he turned to a friend of his in Israel, and he said, when I'm done the Army, we're going to start something for lone soldiers. And after Michael passed, this friend came to us and said, with your help, we'd like to make Michael's dream come true. Michael has gone 19 years. We have the Michael Levin base, which helps thousands of lone soldiers. And we work with other organizations. Stacy will fill you in on all that. We far exceeded anything Michael could have ever dreamed of or wanted. He always said that he wanted to make a difference, and he didn't with his life, but he certainly did with his passing. There's a newfound respect for lone soldiers. We had very prominent rabbis come to us after Michael died and said, we never heard of the term lone soldier. Michael thought that he would be thanked for doing what he did in Israel. And what he got was, are you crazy? What are you doing this for? It all turned after Michael. They saw that all these young men and women coming were doing it out of their love for Israel, their passion, their Zionism. It wasn't a game. And now there's so much respect for them. There's an award given out every year for people in the Army who excel, and a very high number now go to lone soldiers. The number of people either joining the IDF or making Aliyah after Michael increased dramatically. Michael's buried in Jerusalem in Har Herzl. We're told by the groundskeepers it is the most visited grave in Jerusalem. And if you've ever seen it, you would believe it. It is, I don't know, something between a memorial and a junkyard. People don't know what to leave and leave everything and anything. We get letters from kids all the time, especially all the birthright groups go there, that was the highlight of their group, of their tour. And I think because Michael was young and it's someone they could identify with, who had this love of Israel. It wasn't somebody just written in a history book years and years ago. It's a double-edged sword. And at the end, I will answer any question. I don't have my son, but on the other hand, he has really made such a difference um, in lone soldiers and in the respect for them and what we're doing to honor his dream and his memory. Um, and I believe that Michael's no different than any other child in Israel. And had we had in Israel, my parents wouldn't have lost their entire families. Um, when I met President Herzog 2 years ago, the first thing he said to me, he says, "Your son is a national hero." Um, I just want him to continue to inspire people to do good, to love Israel, and especially in this day and age. I don't have to tell any of you what's going on in the United States in the college campuses. I really would like you all to take from him. Stacy is our executive director and the mother of 4 lone soldiers and my friend. And she's going to fill you in on the other part of us. Stays?
Okay.
Rabbi,
So
did you want me to speak now, or you were to?
yeah. So let me just give your introduction here, and then you can go on. So our third speaker today, as we've already heard, is Stacy Stuffelbeam. She is the executive director of the Michael Levin Lone Soldier Foundation, as well as we have just heard, the mother of 4 lone soldiers herself, and all of them are now serving as reservists. She will tell us today about the services offered by the Lone Soldier Foundation, which offers support for lone soldiers in Israel. Stacy.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Harriet. I really appreciate you always. So the Michael Levin Lone Soldier Foundation was established by Mark and Harriet about 15 years ago. As the rabbi said, we serve lone soldiers' needs, not just in Israel, actually. Also, we allocate funds to an organization here in the States that helps lone soldier veterans who've come back to the States. I always like to, I know this is probably a very well-educated audience, but I always like to talk a little bit about what a lone soldier really is. I think that we probably all know that lone soldiers are soldiers in Israel serving in the IDF. And I do want to say that I always point out to people, and this goes along with your theme of peace, that the IDF is the Israel Defense Forces. They're there to defend, not initiate. So, all of our soldiers are serving in the defense of Israel. So a lone soldier is defined as anyone in Israel who does not have support of their parents. There are actually 2 types of lone soldiers. There are about 7,000 active duty lone soldiers right now. About 60% of those come from outside of Israel. They make aliyah. There is a program called Machal where they come and they serve for 18 months and then go back to their home country. But 40% of them are Israeli lone soldiers. These would be soldiers who grew up in Israel, who don't have parental support. Some have been in the foster care system. They're orphaned. They're troubled kids. They're from Haredi families who've disowned them because of their service in the IDF. So the needs of those 2 types of lone soldiers, some can be the same and some quite different. Originally before this war, the definition for a lone soldier, according to the IDF, according to the State of Israel, was any soldier who was serving in active duty. But that active duty only was limited to their normal service. In other words, they would serve 2 years, 8 months, but if they signed on to be an officer, if they signed on to a special forces unit, they served longer. And during that longer period, they were no longer classified as a lone soldier. Also, if they happened to get married during their service, they were no longer classified as a lone soldier. During this war, it was finally recognized that our reservists, our lone reservists, needed some special attention and benefits because even though they weren't doing their active duty service, they still had the same needs. So a lot of Americans, especially, seem to believe that the IDF and the American Army are sort of structured the same. And so I always like to let people know that our lone soldiers really have very unique needs. Unlike for instance, the American Army, where you're deployed to a base for 2 years' time, and you bring all your stuff, and you're given quarters, and you're given food, and you live in that place for 2 years. That's not how it is with the IDF. As you know, it's a conscripted army. And so most of the soldiers are the Israeli soldiers, the not lone soldiers, are coming from home. They just graduated from high school and now they're gone into the army. And when they get off of base, they go home to their parents. They go home to schnitzel in the freezer, in the refrigerator, somebody doing their laundry as soon as they walk in the door, go take a nap, go out with your friends. For lone soldiers, that's not the case because they're not going to a base for 2 years where all their stuff stays and that's where they live. No, these lone soldiers have to find apartments or housing. They have to find meals for Shabbat. Often, especially during training, they don't have a phone during the week. And so they're getting on a bus on Friday morning and getting home just as all the stores are closing. They may be scrambling to find a place to live and find roommates. They may not understand how to fill out certain paperwork. So a lot of what the foundation does is to fund programs and services that serve those needs, that help those kids. Everything from a car to provide transportation to soldiers or to go to their Tekessim or to bring them care packages, to housing, to Shabbat meals, care packages, everything in between.
Can I just jump in for a second, Stace?
Sure.
So when Michael was in Israel and he would get out on Fridays, and as you said, everything was closed, and he had nowhere to go for Shabbos. Um, and Mark and I would say, "What are you doing?" And he'd say, "Oh, I go down to the Kotel," and people there say, "Well, what are you doing for Shabbos?" And he would go home with strangers. And this was so foreign to us. Like, what are you talking about? How can you be going home with strangers? And he says, "Well, I have nowhere to go for Shabbos." That's all different now.
And as you know, because of Mark and Harriet, who established the foundation, and because our board is primarily made of lone soldier parents, we really have the understanding of what they really need. And we have the ability to go out and find those organizations that best serve those soldiers. So when I talked to the rabbi about what I should speak about, I asked if I should share my own personal story. So she said, yes, please do that. So I'm going to take off my foundation hat and put on my lone soldier mom hat. I actually have 5 sons. 4 of them served as lone soldiers. They're all reservists, 3 serving in the war, in this past war. Each of my kids has their own ringtone, their own unique ringtone, because I kind of like to know who's calling me before I run across the room to pick up the phone. And so at 4:35 a.m. on October 7th, my phone rang, and it was the Looney Tunes theme song, which meant it was my youngest son calling. He called and picked up the phone. Of course, we knew there was something wrong. It was Shabbat and it was Chag. We had no idea what had happened. But at 4:35 a.m., he called to say he'd been called for reserve duty. He couldn't really tell us where he was going or much else, and just said, "I'll call you when I can." That call was followed quickly by all my other sons letting me know that they too had been called up for reserve duty. At that point, I didn't know about all the rockets, the thousands of rockets that had fallen. I didn't know about the massacres at the Nova Festival or the infiltrations of the kibbutzim. I just know that something really bad was happening and that my sons were going to defend Israel. A couple of days later, Looney Tunes ringtone again. I was so relieved. My son had his phone. I picked it up. Hi, how are you? What's going on? He said, everybody, we're going on a mission. And everybody's been given their phone to call their family. Sorry. And I would find out later that his unit went straight to Kfar Aza when the Mechablim were there, when the terrorists were still there, and then on to Kibbutz Be'eri and then Aza. But in that moment, what I understood was that this was a goodbye call, that his whole unit had been given their phones to talk to their families before they went on their mission. So what do you say? I love you. Stay safe. Be careful. How are you? How are you doing? And I will never forget his answer. His answer was, Ima, I'm half numb. I'm half scared to death. And there's going to be a lot I need to deal with after. So here we are. We're sort of in the after. We're, working towards peace, certainly a ceasefire. But our kids, our soldiers are only beginning the road to after. So one of the things that that the foundation is so strongly supporting right now is mental health services, both for the veterans who've come back to the States and for the soldiers that are still in Israel and still serving. All of my soldiers served 5 rounds of miluim, of reserve duty, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days. And frankly, they're scheduled to go back again in February. So they're only just beginning to deal with the after. And the foundation is very much aware of what these needs are and looking always to be funding the needs of these soldiers, and especially right now for mental health. So I leave you with, I know we're all praying for peace, and that God willing, one day Israel won't need a defense force, and that we will have peace and our soldiers won't have a job to do.
I, like Stacy, got the call. Michael was home actually on leave when the Second Lebanon War broke out. And he was like a lunatic. He didn't know where he belonged. He was calling Israel. And he finally said, I got to go back. And he went back and they said, your unit has been deployed already. And nobody wanted to tell him where they were. We don't know why. We kind of think because he was a lone soldier, maybe they didn't want to put him at risk yet. Michael was a sharpshooter. Finally, Michael would wear you down until you finally got and just said, just do it. And that's what he did to someone. And they told him where in Lebanon, and he showed up. We were told by his captain, they had a huge argument about it. And Michael said, nope, this is what I was trained for. And before he went in, we got that same kind of call. And he said, do you understand I'm going in? Do you know what I mean? And we, of course, we understood right away. And he said, I have to give up my phone. And I don't know when I can call again. And it turned out I had just had an argument with him a couple days ago. So I told him I loved him and, of course, to be careful. And we were proud of him. He called both of his sisters also to say goodbye, and his current girlfriend, and told her, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid what it will do to my parents. Make sure that they go on. And that was the last time we spoke to Michael. So yeah, that phone call is, you don't know what to tell them. You're proud of them and you're scared to death.
Yeah. And so I just want to quickly mention also that there are several organizations that carry Michael's name. The Michael Levin Lone Soldier Foundation is the only organization that was founded by Mark and Harriet. And we have funded 15 different organizations. We're not a Friends of organization. We've funded 15 different organizations in Israel, and one here in the US that serve the needs of lone soldiers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Stacy, could you just very briefly maybe outline a little bit if our women have questions about what they can do to help your organization?
Of course. So I know that everyone wants to do something tangible. That always makes us feel like, holding something, be able to, I do often get inquiries about, well, can I send something? What do they need? That's not particularly practical, because unfortunately there are incidences where somebody has sent a big package of something and it gets stuck in customs and then it gets sent back. So we do discourage that. Donations to the foundation, because we have the expertise and understanding of what lone soldiers need and the ability to vet the organizations before we allocate dollars. Always donations to the Michael Levin Lone Soldier Foundation. In addition, educating people in your community. If you'd like Harriet or I both travel to talk to communities about lone soldiers, about their unique needs, about how they can be served, we are happy to do that. Harriet did mention that there is a documentary about Michael called A Hero in Heaven. And you can request that documentary. We do ask for a small donation, but you can request that documentary to be shown. Often we get those requests around Yom HaZikaron, but anyone who wants to contact me, I'm happy to speak with them in any way that they can want to support lone soldiers.
You can also go on the website and send cards for any occasion. I get them out immediately. And all that money goes to help lone soldiers as well.
Okay. Thank you both so much for sharing your personal stories as well as the information about the organization, for making this real to us, and helping us to understand what the families of the lone soldiers have to deal with, as well as the soldiers themselves. And I hope that we will hear more from you during the Q&A session. Our final speaker for today is Karmit Palti Katsir, who is a social worker born and raised in Kibbutz Nir Oz, but currently she lives with her family in Haifa. Today, she will be telling us about her father, her mother, and her brother, all of whom lost their lives during and following the October 7th attack. Karmit?
Thank you. I would like to start by telling Harriet how much I'm sorry for your loss. And I would like to share with you, and thank you for having me tonight. It's an evening in Israel. with my family and community story about October 7th and whatever happened ever since. I will try to do it with a presentation so you can all get to meet my family. Is it okay?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the personal and collective trauma, resilience, and attempts at rehabilitation and repair. From both my professional view as a psychotherapist and a social worker, and unfortunately as a family member of hostages and murdered people. I was born and raised, like Rabbi Margie say, in a small community in Kibbutz Nir Oz. We were a family of 5. My father, Rami Katzir, my mother, Hannah Katzir, my brother Elad, and my oldest sister Avital. Elad and my parents lived in the kibbutz. And another thing I want to share with you about Elad, that Elad used to go every Friday since the Hadar Goldin, Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, was fallen in Gaza and his body was kidnapped. He used to stand in the Hadar circle of support with Simcha and Leah Goldin in the picture, and he fought for Hadar's return, even though it was well known that Hadar is no longer alive. And he used to say that if Hadar went to fight for him as an Israeli who lived on the border, he would do the same for Hadar. And I want to share with you a short video of Elad in a rally with the Goldin family from 2022. He stood up for them for 6 years, including October 6, 2023, until the day he was kidnapped himself. Let's see if it works.
יצאנו עכשיו לעזה להשיב את הבנים שנמצאים שם, הדר גולדין ואורון שאול. המדינה שכחה אותם כבר 8 שנים, אבל אנחנו פה כדי להזכיר. יוצאים עכשיו עם המשפחות גולדין, שאול ומנגיסטו עד לעזה להשיב את הבנים. ממשלת ישראל זה התפקיד שלך, אבל אם לא עשית את זה, אנחנו פה כדי להזכיר, ואנחנו נעשה מה שצריך כדי להשיב את הבנים. לא שכחנו ואנחנו לא מזכירים את המשפחות מאחורה. הבנים שלהם הם שלנו. ממשלת ישראל, תתעוררי על עצמך.
And then October 7th happened. I'm sure you all know the facts, but I want to share them anyway. So it was a morning of Shabbat and holiday, 6:29 a.m., an extensive missile attacks, more than 4,000, an entry of 6,000 terrorists into Israel, an invasion to multiple communities, and attacking the Nova Festival, also not too far from Nir Oz, near to Kibbutz Re'im, was a massacre of multiple dead, casualties, missing and kidnapped people. This is some really small part of our correspondence with my brother and sister. We used to have a WhatsApp group of siblings. And what I'm not going to translate everything, but I do want to translate some of it. So the main questions are, what's going on? Where is the army? Where is the state of Israel? Where is the police forces? So we live in Kibbutz Nir Oz. It's very close by to the border, less than a mile. And it started with the rockets. And then Elad started telling us that there is shooting all over the kibbutz. It was the first time ever that terrorist has able to enter the kibbutz. He wrote to us, there is a huge fight inside of the kibbutz. There are terrorists dressed up as soldiers. And we, his sister, told him, okay, just stay in the mamad, stay in your safe room. Nothing can happen to you. when you are in your home shelter, when you are in your safe room, try to lock it, try to do it whatever you can. And we're speaking to him, and we're speaking with my parents as well. And in some point, he told us at 9 a.m. that we need to get help to the kibbutz because no one's coming. And I don't know if you know that, but Kibbutz Nir Oz, the people in Kibbutz Nir Oz, were left alone. No one came, not from the army, not the IDF soldiers, not the police forces. No one came. And the last terrorist has left the kibbutz before the first soldiers had entered the kibbutz. It was an hour of a gap. And while the forces of police entered, there was no more terrorists inside the kibbutz. And then we lost communication with him. What you can see over here, it's an audio messages where we hear gunshots, really loud gunshots, and I was extremely afraid, of course. And then I called him, even though I shouldn't, because I was so scared, and he was trying to record a message saying, we need to be strong, we need to be resilient. And he was speaking so heavily that I could almost didn't understand him. And then he repeat, tzarich chosen, tzarich chosen. Chosen is the Hebrew word for resilience. And then I called him, and he told me one sentence, and that was our last conversation, the last phone call. He told me, sis, I can't talk to you. There are terrorists inside my home. And then the phone fell down, and I never heard from him again. So I'm gonna skip this video, but right, Rabbi Margie, we don't have time for another video, or we do?
I have you scheduled to speak until 1:11, so you have about another 10 minutes altogether.
Okay, so I'm going to skip this, but I do want to share some of the statistics that the massacre of Kibbutz Nir Oz was involved with 117 people, children, women, and men, 400 people, more than a quarter of the population of Kibbutz Nir Oz, a small community. 65 people were dead. 83 people were kidnapped, and 76 entered as Gaza. 53 hostages were released through agreement, hostage deals, and it took 755 days until we were able to bury our last hostage, Amiram Cooper. And I want to respect them by showing you that each and every one of them, here you can see all the people from my kibbutz that either kidnapped or murdered that day. Most of them are no longer with us. And then I realized after 10 days of chaos, of not having anyone from the government or from the IDF, no officer, nothing, all of Israel was in complete chaos, that we, the family members, need to fight for our loved ones. And it was crazy, but that's what we did. We went to rallies, we went protesting, we went to the Knesset, we went to speak with the Prime Minister, we went to speak with anyone we could. And I want to share with you an unbelievable fact that for the first few days of the war, the mission, the goal of releasing hostages was not part of the goals of the war. And then only because of our public pressure of the hostage family, it was considered to be the fifth or the sixth goal by priority. And our goal was to push it up until everyone in Israel would understand that releasing the hostages is at least should be the second goal, if not the first. And those are not prisoners of war, they're not soldiers mostly, they're just innocent civilians who were taken in their pajamas on a Friday, on a Shabbat morning. And after 49 days on the first hostage deal, I got my mom back. And if you can see, I called it also a victory. This was what victory looks like because I had the privilege of making her a cup of coffee after 49 days that she was not treated. I said she was not treated well, but the truth is that she was starved and she was tortured and she didn't get any medical treatment. And she came back to us. I'm sure you can see the look in my eyes versus the look in her eyes. She came back to us extremely ill. And that was the day after. This picture was taken the day after she came back. And 9 days later, she was under induced coma. Her heart collapsed, her lung collapsed, and she was hospitalized for more than 7 months in ICU unit. And we got to have some of our people back. And all of these pictures are only pictures of women and children and grandmother for my kibbutz. And then in January and February, it took a very long time until we have another deal and we got the soldiers, the women soldiers back and some of the men. For more than my brother was kidnapped alive. We know that for a fact. He was filmed in videos and he was in captivity with 2 other ladies from my kibbutz, and they returned and they talked to us about his situation and his state, but he was murdered in captivity. And then I didn't say that, but my dad was murdered on October 7th, and Elad was murdered in captivity. We don't know for sure what was the circumstances. We do know that he was alive for sure until January. And if a hostage deal would have been signed before, he would have been here with us today. And this is part of and I think everyone loss and rage that we could have saved so many hostages if this war would have conducted differently. And I also want to tell you that part of me being a social worker and a therapist made me realize that we are encountering with a very, very different shape of mourning, of bereavement, of trauma. And what we knew before about separation and loss and bereavement is very, very different. We are facing things that we didn't know before, an ambiguous loss and disrupted bereavement, a delayed grief, a bereaved community, and multiple trauma, declaring death in captivity without forensic evidence, so many atrocities that we didn't know before. And we're trying to live today with those who are with us and with those who are with us by heart only. And I miss them terribly. But this is not the end of the story, because I feel and I think and I know that our fight was so meaningful for the hostages. It kept them hoping and it kept them know that we are fighting for them, and no one forgot their being in captivity. And it was so meaningful for us, for the families and for the community and for the solidarity in the Israeli community and in the Jewish community, that it made us speak again about values, the value of Pidyon Shvuim, the value of solidarity, the value of leave no one behind. And it also helped us as a society, the Israeli society, to mend our personal mental health and our social resilience. And where do we start to begin to repair. So it's only a few bullets of my thoughts, but I feel like we should all start by being with humanity and compassion. That every victim is a person whose entire world has collapsed, and none of us chose to be in this position. And we need to listen very carefully and give the people to tell their own stories with their own experience, with their own words, and try to avoid making assumption. For example, some of the returnees are calling themselves captivity survivors, and some of them calling themselves captivity winners. And it's a whole matter of narrative. What is the story who helps you survive and to validate your experience? And I also feel that recognition and validation enable healing, and that and it's part of the reason I'm here today, is to speak the truth and to call for accountability and appropriate legislation, and to give the returnees and the families their rights, their legal rights, and the money they need in order to start the healing process, which we know it will take many years. And the most crucial thing for me is nothing about us without us, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Which talk about including victims in the decision-making process, give us a seat at the table, not just as a research subjects or focus group participant, but learning from the field, restoring power and agency to the field. And I want to end by quoting wonderful Rachel Goldberg-Poling, mom of Hirsch Goldberg-Poling. We are not what we say, we are not what we think, and we are not even what we believe. In this life, we are what we do. And we still have Ran Vili to save and to return home. He's still in Gaza, and his family is still in hell, and our mission is not done.
Thank you, Kamrit, for sharing so much of your own personal story and the story of your family. And may your father's, your mother's, and your brother's memories continue to be for a blessing, as well as the memory of Michael Levin and all the other people that were victims of October 7th and all of the Israeli wars. We're going to turn now to the question and answer session. If you have not entered your questions into the chat, you can do that at this time. And I'm going to reintroduce our executive director, Rabbi Ellen Mullins Fields, who is going to moderate this part of the program.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's remarks. They were extremely moving and brought to life what we read on TV. And it's just not in the news. You're living it day in and day out. Our international president was able to go to Israel just a week after October 7th. I was there in November of 2023. I've gotten to visit Nir Oz twice. It's beautiful. And as I walked through, I was thinking one day maybe my children will live here, and it would be great if they could live in peace. And I saw pictures of your family all over. So it really brings it to life now. And we extend our condolences to you, and it's a bizarre honor to have you with us, to speak the truth and to speak what's been going on. So thank you for being with us. As we say in Yiddish, a little verklempt. So thank you for being with us. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet some of the redeemed hostages as the Conference of Presidents spoke of them, and some of them you could see a glaze in their eyes, which I could imagine. No one can really imagine what they all went through. So thank you. Okay, so some of the questions and the comments. So one comment was from my own mother, so thank you. And she wrote to me, and my niece Erica just finished her Army service as a lone soldier the day after she got married. I think the wedding was October 19th, and she finished her service October 20th. And when she made Aliyah from Long Island, she was one of 40 young adults on the Nefesh B'Nefesh flight who were going to be lone soldiers. And one of those other lone soldiers on that flight became her brother-in-law, also my nephew. So also during the war, my mother wanted to add that my other nieces, who also made Aliyah, and so their sisters, their friends, they all made challah and brought it to the Michael Levin Center for Shabbat. And it's great that the center is now also helping and assisting the lone Sherut, Benot Sherut girls as well, young women who go to serve in different places, not just in the army. So it's really something. And Julia and I have also it's one of our stops in Israel when we go is to the Michael Levin Lone Soldier. And we brought a whole bunch of knitted hats a few years ago. So here are a few questions. Some of them are one is to Rabbi Berkowitz, because that came right after you spoke. So I'll give the questions I have now, and then hopefully you'll all remember the questions. So Rabbi Berkowitz, my friend, my colleague, how does the government of Israel try to live up to the ideal of peace while defending itself? That was the question that came right after you spoke. I'm sure everyone could try to answer that question. Not sure anyone can answer that. Another question was, what kind of pay do soldiers in the IDF receive, which any of you might want to answer. And then also, I actually never knew that the Michael Levin Foundation helps the lone soldiers who then go back to their homes, go back to their original homes, meaning if after their service, if they go back to the United States, for example. So I'm just curious, what sort of services do you have for these young men and women who, after their service, then go back to their home of origin and often with probably undiagnosed PTSD, especially after this last war. So I hope you all can remember those questions so far. I'll be quiet and let you all speak. Rabbi Berkowitz, if you wanted to start.
I think I need to ask GPT about this. I don't know.
We can give you a break and go to the next one if you wanted.
Yeah, that would be great. No, but I can say about the salary for regular soldiers that my daughter's a border guard on the edge of Jordan and sometimes Sinai, and it's 2,000 shekels a month, and then they have to buy their own food because the kitchen was blown up. But I think that the reserve people is more like 10,000 shekels, but I don't know about the people.
So what's the conversion rate lately?
It probably depends on if you're a doctor or whatever you do in there, and probably if you're an officer, it's more. So that's not an official answer. It's just an anecdotal evidence. And I'll have one more thing to say later. I just want to gather my thoughts.
Okay, no, that's fine. And I wanted to add another caveat that my mother, as the grandmother of the lone soldier, wanted to say thank you to the Michael Levin Foundation for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want, I can handle the two of those questions, and Harriet.
Thank you.
So the benefits that active duty lone soldiers get, and that is not reservists, but in their active duty service, is they get double the salary of an Israeli lone soldier. They also get a housing stipend, and they get a food stipend. So those are some of the benefits. The other benefits they get are depending, and also their salary depends on where they are in the army. For instance, a combat soldier makes more money than a combat support soldier, or what they call a jobnik. So someone who's like a yomiyot, like has a job, maybe an office job, and goes home every day. So those salaries are all three different levels, but all of them receive double what an Israeli soldier would get. They also get 1 day off, a Yom Sidorim, to kind of take care of business. So they lost their debit card, so they don't have a mom there who's going to the bank and helping them to get their debit card. They need that. So they get a Yom Sidorim 1 day a month, and in training, and then 1 day every other month after that. They also get something called a miyuchedet, which is a 30-day leave to go back to their home country to visit. So those are the main benefits. Reservists do not receive necessarily salary for their reserve duty. There is a very base salary. I'm not sure how much it is, but generally speaking, they receive what they make in their real job. So it makes reservists very expensive. And it was one of the things where they were trying to decrease the number of reservists that were serving because they're very costly. For the question about what kind of programs and services are here in the US, so there's a particular organization called Nevut that the Michael Levin Lone Soldier Foundation gives a large allocation to, and they do everything from, providing networking for jobs to providing um, uh, mental health counseling. So the foundation gives them a grant specifically for a social worker that does social work triage. They have a holistic approach. So in other words, this veteran may be suffering from PTSD, but he's also having some problems in his marriage, or he lost his job, or things like that. So they take a holistic approach to that, and that's one of the things the foundation really feels is very important.
First of all, Carmit, I send you a huge hug. At the end of the day, we don't have our family. The difference is my son went into it with eyes wide open and knew what he was doing. My heart breaks for you, and I thank you for sharing your story today. The other thing I like to say is it's really the Michael Levin base in Jerusalem. I urge anybody who's going there, they're right near the Shuk, to go and visit, to go and volunteer. They have a supply closet that you need to see, that the soldiers come and whatever they need, they just take, whether it's toothpaste or tampons. They just do amazing work. Besides the counseling, they just had Thanksgiving dinner for them. And it's for lone soldiers and for Benot Sharut. And I couldn't be prouder of what they're doing.
Okay. It's a really pleasure hearing you speak to. Everyone knows the name, and now to hear the story in person, it's really very special. It's chaval that it had to turn up for the reason that it was. Okay, so I did do a bit of research, and who mentioned it's the IDF? Was it Stacy that it's supposed to be defensive? That's one of the principles that when Israel has a good army, it's supposed to be a deterrent, and it's definitely it's supposed to be like not. They, in most of the wars that happened, they were not the one to initiate. Maybe 67 maybe was preemptive by a few days because all the signs were so certain that they knew it was going to happen. But I mean, in theory, they tried diplomacy, and when the army does have to do something, they go to great lengths to minimize civilian harm. I mean, this past year, you could argue that this was because of the circumstances, not as much living up to these ideals as usual. But that's some of the things. And I sent Rabbi Ellen, I sent you a whole bunch of things about the training that happens in the army.
Yes, did you want to add those?
I couldn't send it all as one chunk, but if you want, I can.
Yeah, if you want to read it, I think Rabbi Sella, we have some time for that. And then the last question also, I just want to add, was self-care, how you all take care of yourselves as well. Okay, so Rabbi Berkowitz, if you want to read some of what you found.
Okay, so it's not exactly the question that was asked, but it is related. What are some structures and mechanisms for ethical training in the IDF? Obviously, some falls through the cracks, and some people are angry or racist or whatever, just humiliate people. But in general, they have this whole learning about human dignity, purity of arms. It's called tohar haneshek, like not to be disproportionate in your reactions. And they have, in officer training, there's stuff about ethics and lots of things in the pre-military year, the gap year. They learn stuff and they talk about, so like Stacy said, it's not the kind of army where you go off for 2 years to Georgia, or like 4 years to Siberia or something. It's a different. I mean, they probably don't always meet the ideals, but I think that the goal is just like, okay, we have to be here, and this is a very bad neighborhood, so how can we do the minimum? But it's very hard to navigate this question without being perceived to be political in some way. So that's what I'll just say, that it's the constant tension between being nice and being alive. So however you fall out on that balance is, yeah. Okay, that's all I have to say now.
I have to
So
jump
I think
off.
the last question about self-care, I think that's directed at Karmit, from someone who is a previously licensed social worker. She wants to know, how do you care for yourself?
It's a classical social work question, so thank you for that. I would start by saying that it's not easy at all. I used to work in 3 different places. I used to have a private practice, a clinic. I'm not accepting any clients nowadays. Nowadays, it's been 2 years now. I'm getting a therapy, but I want to say that many of us, I'm part of thinking about mental health issues for other families, and I'm taking part of many of initiative on that area. So I want to say that many of us are not even emotionally available to take care of themselves until our loved one is not coming back, because all the energy went, and I can say it from a first sight about myself, that as long as I was fighting for my brother, for my mother, I had a therapist. She was completely available for me, but I wasn't available for therapy. I was fighting. I was on the streets. I was in a meeting. I was at the Knesset. I was everywhere, but it was so hard to consume those resources for me. Nowadays, I'm very much into many therapy for myself and for the community of hostage families. I would share a link. Unfortunately, it's not translated yet, but it's a very visual project that I led with another member of Kibbutz Niroz, Renana Gomi Yaakov. She is the mother of 2 teenager hostages that were abducted from their father's home. He was murdered, and they returned. So we did like a community therapy in Kibbutz Niroz, and we asked for people to tell their stories in their own words about the homes they used to live. I don't know if you know that, but 90% of Niroz is being burned. And people lost not only the lives of their loved ones, but they lost their homes. The community of Kibbutz Niroz is not living in the kibbutz mostly. Just now, few people are starting to return. And the rehabilitation is we're doing a very tiny steps, baby steps. And it's been 793 days today since October 7th. And I feel like we're just starting to to understand what we've been through.
Okay, so obviously we could go on for a very, very long time talking about all the topics that we have discussed today. I want to express my deepest appreciation for our four speakers today, for sharing your stories with us, for being so open about what you have gone through and what you continue to go through. I hope that those of you who listened in today, who joined the program, that you have found some meaningful insights from the program, as well as from our two previous programs from this year and the ones from the previous 4 years as well. I would like to personally thank all those who helped to plan this year's series of programs, Rabbi Ellen Mullins Fields and our WLCJ Israel liaison, Diane Friedgut. And a huge, huge thank you to our very talented tech person, Karen Belena, who designed all of our wonderful publicity flyers and without whose expertise this program would not have run so smoothly today. I look forward to seeing you again next year to continue our Sichot ben Achayot, conversations between sisters.